continuing our reading of Pliny the Elder, Natural History, Book 2, picking up at Chapter 6. This chapter is on the discarding of the superstition of astrology, and he talks about astronomy, the planets, the sun, the moon, and he begins to talk about eclipses. Let us begin in Latin. Hinc redeamus ad aliqua naturae, sidera, quae ad fixa diximus mundo, non ita ut existimat, vulgus, singulis attributa nobis et clara divitibus, minora pauperibus, obscura defectis ac pro sorte cuiusque lucentia adumerata mortalibus, nec cum quoquaeque homine oriuntur, nec aliquem extingui decidua significant. Non tanta caelo societas nobis cum ut estut nostro fato mortalis sit, ibi quoque siderum fugor. Illa nimio alimento tracti humoris ignea vi abundantiam redunt cum decidere crescuntur. Ut apud nos quoque luminibus a censis liquora olei notamus accidere. Ceterum aeterna caelestibus est natura interrexentibus mundum in textoque concretis. Potia autem ad terra magnoperorum pertinens, quae propter effectus claritatemque et magnitudinem in tanta subtilitate nosci potuerunt, sicut suo demonstrabimus loco. Circulorum quoque caeli ratio in terrae mentione aptius dicetur, quando ad eam tota pertinet, signiferi modo inventionibus, non dilatis. Obliquitatem eius intellexisse, hoc est rerum fores aperuisse. Anaxamander Milesius traditur primus Olympiade quinquagesima-octava, signa deinde in eo Cleostratus, et prima Arietis ac Sagittari sphaeram ipsam ante multo atlas. Nunc relicto mundi ipsius corpore reliqua inter caelum terrasque tractentur. Summum esse quod vocant Saturni situs, idioque minimum videri et maximo ambire circulo, ac 30 anno cum brevissime ad sedi suae principia regredi certum est. Omnium autem errantium siderum meatus, interque ea solis et lunae, contrarium mundo agere cursum. Id est laevum, illo semper in dextram praecipiti, et quam vis adsidua conversione immensae celeritatis atolantur, ab eo rapianturque in occasum, adverso tamen ire motu per suos quaeque passus. Ita fieri ne convolutus aer, eandam in partem aeterna mundi vertigine ignavo globo torpeat, sed fundatur adverso siderum verbere discretus et digestus. Saturni autem situs gelidae ac regentis esse naturae. Motumque ex eo inferiorum Jovis circulum, et ideum motu celeriore duodenis circummagi annis. Tertium martis, quod quidam Herculis vocant. Igne ardens solis vicinitate, binisfere annis converti, idioque huius ardore nimio et rigore Saturni interjectum ambobus ex utroque temperare Jovem salutaremque fieri. Dein solis, meatum esse partium quidem trecentarium sexaginta, sed ut observatio umbrarum eius redeat ad metas, quinos annis dies addici superque quartam partem diei. quam ob causam quinto quique anno unus intercalarius dies aditor ut temporam ratio solis itineri congruat. Talking about leap years. Infra solem ambit ingens sidus appellatum Veneris, alterno meatu vagum ipsisque cognominibus aemulum solis ac lunae. Praeveniens quippe, et ante matudinem exoriens luciferi nomen accipit, ut sol alter diemque maturans, contra ab occaso refulgens, nuncupatur vesper, ut prorogans lucem vicemque lunae redens. Quam naturam eius Pythagoras Samios primis deprehendit, Olympiade cerciter quadrintaduo, qui fuit urbis Romae annos centum quadrintaduo, iam magnitudine extra cuncta alia sidera est. Claritatis quidem tantae ut unius huius stellae radiis umbrae redantur. Itaque et in magno nominum ambitu est, alii enim Junonis, alii Isitis, alii matris Deum appellavere, huius natura cuncta generantur in terris, namque in alterutu exortu genitale roor conspergens non terrae modo conceptus implet, verum animantium quoque omnium stimulat. Signiferi autem ambitum per agit trecentis et duo quinquagenis diebus. A sole nomquam abstinens partibus sex atque quadraginta longius, ut timeo placet. Simili ratione, sed nequaquam magnitudine aut vi proximum illi Mercuriis sidus, a quibusdam appellatum Apollonis, inferiore circulo fertur novem diebus ociore ambitu. Modo ante solis ex ortum modo post occasum splendens, numquam ab eo duodecimus partibus remotior, ut cidenas et sosigenes docent. Ideo et peculiaris orum siderum ratio est neque communis cum supradictis. Nam ea et quarta parte caeli a sole abesse et tertia, et adversa soli saepe cernuntur. Majoresque alios abent cuncta plenae, conversionis ambitus in magni anni ratione dicendos. Sed omnium admirationem vincit novissimum sidus, terris familiarissum, et in tenebrarum remedium ab natura repertum lunae. Multiformi haec ambage torsit ingenia complentantium, et proximum ignorare maxime sidus indignantium. Crescens semper aut senescens, et modo curvata in cornua falcis, modo aeque portione divisa, modo sinuata in orbem, maculosa eademque subito praenitens immensa orbe pleno ac repente nulla, alias pernox, alias sera et parte diei solis lucem adiuvans, deficiens et in defectu tamen conspicua, quae mensis exitu latet cum laborare non creditur. Iam vero humilis, iam excelsa, et ne id quidem uno modo, sed alias ad mota caelo, alias contigua montibus. Nunc in Aquilonem elata, nunc in Austros deiecta. Quae singula in ea deprehendit hominum primus endymion, ob id amor eius fama traditur. Non sumus profecto grati erga eos qui labore curaque lucem nobis aperuere in hac luce miraque humani ingeni peste sanguinem et caedes condere anni annalibus juvat, ut scelera hominum noscantur mundi ipsius ignaris. Proxima ergo cardini idioque minimo ambitu vicenis diebus septenisque et tertia diei parte peragit spatia eadem quae Saturni sidus altissimum triginta ut dictum est annis. De in morata in coitu solis biduo cum tardissime a tricesima luce russus ad eastem vices exit. Haud scio an omnium quae in caelo pernosci potuerunt magistra. In duodecim mensium spatia oportere dividi annum. Quando ipsa totiens solem re duentem ad principia consequitur, solis fulgore eam et ut reliqua siderum regi, sesquidem in totum mutuata ab eo luce fulgere, qualem in repercussu aquae volitare conspicimus. Ideo muliore et imperfecta vi solvere tantum humorem, atque etiam augere, quem solis radii absumant. Ideo et inaequali lumine ad spici quia ex adversos demum plena reliquis diebus tantum ex se terris ostendat, quantum ex sole ipsa concipiat. In coetu quidem non cerni, quoniam austo omnem lucis adversa illo regerat, unde acceperit. Sidera vero, haud dubie humore terreno pasci, quia dimidio orbe non numquam maculosa cernatur, scilicet non dum suppetente ad hauriendum ultra justa, maculas enim non aliud esse quam terrae raptas cum humore sordes. Defectus autem suos et solis, rem in tota contemplatione, naturae maxime miram, et ostento similem, magnitudinem umbraeque indices existere. Chapter 6. Let us return from these questions to the remaining facts of nature. We have stated that the stars are attached to the firmament, not assigned to each of us in the way in which the vulgar believe, and dealt out to mortals with a degree of radiance, proportionate to the lot of each, the brightest stars to the rich, the smaller ones to the poor, the dim to those who are worn out. They do not each rise with their own human being, nor indicate their fall that someone's life is being extinguished. There is no such close alliance between us and the sky, that the radiance of the stars, that there also shares our fate of mortality. When the stars are believed to fall, what happens is that owing to their being overfed with a draught of liquid, they give back to the surplus with a fiery flash. Just as with us, also we see this occur with a stream of oil when lamps are lit. But the heavenly bodies have a nature that is eternal. They interweave the world and are blended with its weft. Yet their potency has a powerful influence on the earth. Indeed, it is owing to the effects that they produce and to their brilliance and magnitude that it has been possible for them to become known with such a degree of precision, as we shall show in the proper place. Also, the system of revolutions of the sky, will be more appropriately stated when we deal with geography, since it is entirely related to the Earth. Only we must not postpone the discoveries that have been made as to the zodiac. Tradition says that Anaximander of Miletus in the 58th Olympiad was the first person to discover the obliquity of the zodiac, that is, to open the portals of science, and that next Cleostratus explained the signs in it, beginning with the ram and the archer, the firmament having been explained long before by Atlas. Let us now leave the frame of the world itself and treat the remaining bodies situated between the sky and the earth. The following points are most certain: that the star called Saturn is the highest and consequently looks the smallest and revolves in the largest orbit, returning in 30 years at the shortest to its initial station. The motions of all the planets, and among them the sun and the moon, follow a course contrary to that of the world, namely, to the left, the world always running to the right. Although they are borne on it and carried westward with an unceasing revolution of immeasurable velocity, nevertheless they travel with an opposite motion along their respective tracks. Thus it comes about that the air is not massed in a dull, lethargic ball by revolving in the same direction because of the eternal rotation of the world, but it is scattered into separate portions by the opposite impact of the stars. Saturn is of a cold and frozen nature. The orbit of Jupiter is much below it, and therefore revolves much faster, completing one rotation every 12 years. The third planet is Mars, having called by some Hercules, owing to the proximity of the sun. It has a fiery glow. It revolves once in about 2 years, and consequently, owing to its excessive heat and Saturn's frost, Jupiter, being situated between them, combines the influence of each and is rendered healthy. Next, the sun's course is divided into 360 parts, but in order that an observation, taken of the shadows that it casts, may come round to the starting point, 5¼ days per annum are added. Consequently, to every 4th year, an intercalary day is added to make our chronology tally with the course of the sun. Below the sun revolves a very large star named Venus, which varies its course alternately, and whose alternative names in themselves indicate its rivalry with the sun and the moon. When in advancing and rising before dawn, it receives the name of Lucifer, as being another sun and bringing the dawn. Whereas when it shines after sunset, it is termed Vesper, as prolonging the daylight, or as being a deputy for the moon. This property of Venus was first discovered by Pythagoras of Samos, about the 42nd Olympiad, that is, 142 years after the foundation of Rome. Further, it surpasses all the other stars in magnitude, and is so brilliant that alone among the stars it casts a shadow by its rays. Consequently, there is a great competition to give it a name, some having called it Juno, others Isis, others the mother of the gods. Its influence is the cause of the birth of all things upon earth, and both its risings and settings at both of its risings it scatters a genital dew with which it not only fills the conceptive organs of the earth, but also stimulates those of all animals. It completes the circuit of the zodiac every 348 days, and according to Timaeus, is never more than 46 degrees distant from the sun. The next star to Venus is Mercury, by some called Apollo. It has a similar orbit, but is by no means similar in magnitude or power. It travels a lower circle, with a revolution 9 days quicker, shining sometimes before sunrise and sometimes just after sunset, but according to Sidanus and Sosigenes, never more than 22 degrees away from the sun. Consequently, the course of these stars is also peculiar, and not shared by those above mentioned. Those are often observed to be a quarter or a third of the heaven away from the sun, and traveling against the sun. And they have other larger circuits of full revolution, the specification of which belongs to the theory of the great year. But the wonder of everyone is vanquished by the last star, the one most familiar to the earth, and devised by nature to serve as a remedy for the shadow of darkness, our moon. By the riddle of her transformations, she has racked the wits of observers, who are ashamed that the star which is nearest should be the one about which we know the least, always waxing or waning, now curved into the horns of a sickle, now just halved in size, now rounded into a circle, spotted, and then suddenly shining clear, vast and full orbed, and then all of a sudden not there at all. At one time shining all night, at another rising late, and for a part of the day augmenting the light of the sun, eclipsed and nevertheless visible during the eclipse, invisible at the end of the month when she is not believed to be in trouble. Again at one time low down, and at another up aloft, and not even this in a uniform way, but sometimes raised to the sky and sometimes touching the mountain tops, now borne up to the north, now carried down to the south, the first human being to observe all these facts about her was Endymion, which accounts for the traditional story of his love for her. We forsooth feel no gratitude towards those whose assiduous toil has given us illumination on the subject of this luminary, while, owing to a curious disease of the human mind, we are pleased to enshrine in history records of bloodshed and slaughter, so that persons ignorant of the facts of the world may be acquainted with the crimes of mankind. The moon, then, is nearest to the pole, and therefore has the smallest orbit, completing the same distance every 27 1/3 days that Saturn, the highest star, covers, as we have said, in 30 years. Then she lingers 2 days in conjugation with the sun, and after the 30th day, at latest, sets out again on the same course, perhaps being our teacher as to all the facts that it has been possible to observe in the heavens. That the year is to be divided into 12 monthly spaces, because she herself that number of times follows the sun in his return to his starting point. That she is governed by the sun's radiance, as are the rest of the stars, as in fact she shines with a light entirely borrowed from him, like the light that we see flickering reflected in water. That consequently she only causes water to evaporate with a rather gentle and imperfect force, and indeed increases its quantity, whereas the sun's rays dry it up. Also that the reason why she is seen to vary in her light is that she is full only when opposite to the sun, and on the remaining days shows as much light from herself to the earth as she herself conceives from the sun, though she is indeed invisible when in conjugation with the sun, because being turned towards him, she gives back the entire draught of light to the source from which she receives it. But that the stars are undoubtedly nourished by the moisture of the earth, since she is sometimes seen spotted in half her orb, clearly because she has not yet got sufficient strength to go on drinking. her spots being merely dirt from the earth taken up with the moisture. But that her eclipses, and those of the sun, the most marvelous and indeed portentous occurrence in the whole of our observation of nature, serve as indications of their dimensions and shadow. End of part 2.